What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. It's been about 2 weeks since the end of the NFL draft, and it's given me a good amount of time to go ahead and analyze the selections that were made, the players chosen in general, but more importantly, the fantasy implications that these rookies will have. And that's exactly what I want to deep dive here, because I've got a list of my favorite selections made by several teams throughout the 3-day draft process. And particularly, we're going to look at how they can be fantasy relevant. So let's get right into it. Kicking things off, we have got the selection of Kyler Murray by the Arizona Cardinals. And as far as picks go, this is one that has fantasy implications on numerous levels. First and foremost, starting with the quarterback himself. To me, I do believe Kyler Murray is a better option, better offensive talent, better fantasy option than what Josh Rosen would have been for the Cardinals this year. I do think Murray has a higher ceiling. I think he is a better pocket presence. He's a little bit more athletic. And then obviously in a better offensive scheme and in a better quarterback and head coach pairing than what Josh Rosen would have found himself in. If there's any head coach that's going to want to maximize the potential of Murray, it's Cliff Kingsbury. He just has so much tied to this selection, and I think he's going to give every single opportunity to Murray for him to succeed. As far as fantasy quarterback rankings, I probably have Murray right around the late teens spot at this point in time, right around 16 to 19, maybe even 20. I still think there's some question marks in that offense, but there are some good things going for the Cardinals. Look, a guy in Hakeem Butler that they got in the draft, great value pick there. Christian Kirk, he has another year, and I think he will continue to grow. Larry Fitzgerald, he keeps getting older, but he is so very reliable. And then obviously David Johnson. The questions that I have, the offensive line in Arizona, I think that was a big reason why Josh Rosen struggled so much, big reason why David Johnson under-delivered. And personally, I'm not sure whether the Cardinals did enough to address the questions they had on that line. I'd love to hear from some Cardinal fans on that take, but that's how I feel at this point in time. I still think that division is a very tough one. Heck, I'd probably take a chance on Murray in some easier matchups versus some struggling defenses. Maybe when you need a buy, plug in and play type of quarterback, I think he could get the job done. But for now, he is not going to be, a starting fantasy quarterback the way that I see it, unless that offense really takes a big step forward. But speaking of that offense, the point that has to be addressed is David Johnson, because he is by far, in a way, the most fantasy relevant option on that offense. Heck, he was a top 5 fantasy selection last year. He was a top 5 fantasy running back only a few years back when Carson Palmer was there. If it's just based on talent, David Johnson is, again, a top 5 guy. The question mark still remains that offensive line, and I do think it's a reason why I'm not willing to elevate David Johnson much higher than late first round, early second round, which is right around where he is going. But I will say this, having Kyler Murray there and pairing him with DJ does make me feel better than having Josh Rosen, who, again, I don't think he can extend plays quite as well. I don't think he would have meshed quite as well with Cliff Kingsbury. So for that reason, I'm willing to bump up David Johnson maybe 2 or 3 spots in my overall rankings, and I'd be all right with taking him at the end of the first round. I do think Murray being there helps him, even if it's only by a little bit. But let's be honest, any additional offensive weapons and help in general to that Cardinals offense is a good thing for David Johnson. Take some attention away from him. We can see what Kyler Murray will be able to do with his arm, and then open up those big holes for DJ later on. So for that reason, this is a thumbs up. Not only for the Cardinals offense, but more importantly for David Johnson. Continuing on, we've got the selection of Jonah Williams by the Cincinnati Bengals. And honestly, this was my favorite selection in the entire first round. I love it in terms of value pick. I think Williams should have been a top 10 selection. I love it in terms of a fit for the Cincinnati Bengals. They needed to upgrade that offensive line, and I think Jonah Williams is going to be one of the most reliable offensive linemen to come out of this draft. I think he is a day 1 starter, and this really gives me hope for the Bengals, because a lot of people were thinking, are the Bengals going to go ahead and replace Andy Dalton with that first selection? No, look, they passed on Drew Lock, they passed on Dwayne Haskins. They are building that offensive line, and this gives me a lot of hope for that Cincinnati offense. Look, I said the Bengals were an offense that I thought would take a big step forward last year. they definitely did so, and I think they're going to continue taking steps forward this year. I love what this means for Joe Mixon, giving him a big offensive lineman to open up more holes for him. I think Joe Mixon will be a running back number one. I think he's going to continue his push into fantasy relevance this year. He was an absolute stud last year when on the field. I think he continues that trajectory in 2019. I love what this means for Andy Dalton. Go ahead and give him some more protection. Give him some more time to find guys like AJ Green and Tyler Boyd, Tyler Eifert, whoever it is. This is a big win for the Cincinnati Bengals offense in general. And for this reason, I'm going to go ahead and bump up guys like Tyler Boyd a little bit more so, Joe Mixon, and AJ Green. Heck, even Andy Dalton. I think Andy Dalton, when it comes to matchups and when it comes to bye weeks, he's not a bad option. Inserting Jonah Williams there is a huge win for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's an absolute slam dunk of a pick and great fantasy implications for the stars of the Bengals. Next, I've got the Atlanta Falcons and their addition of two offensive linemen in the first round in Lindstrom and McGary. And similar with the Cincinnati Bengals, even though the selections here are on the offensive line, not very flashy, I think this is going to do wonders for the Atlanta offense. Particularly for Matt Ryan and Devonta Freeman. Now, this was already an offense that was very potent beforehand with Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Matt Ryan leading the show. But this gives me a lot more faith that Matt Ryan can duplicate the success he had last year. I think Matt Ryan is a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And now with added protection and depth on the offensive line, and at certain points when they struggled there last year, I think they've made steps in the right direction in 2019. I think Matt Ryan continues his success. Obviously, Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones won't be too much affected by this. I think more or less they will continue their success that they had fantasy-wise. But other than Matt Ryan, Devonta Freeman, another big beneficiary here. If he can stay healthy, no Tavon Coleman gone, I think he is a top 15 running back, potentially top 10. Obviously, the big thing will be, can he stay healthy? But with these two mammoth offensive linemen, they're going to open up holes for Devonta Freeman. They're going to protect Matt Ryan. And I just think the Atlanta Falcons got unlucky last year. I think they're a playoff team. I think they're going to go ahead, continue the success they had offensively. They continue to make that offense, which is already a strong point, even stronger. And I love what it does for Matt Ryan and Devonta Freeman. Absolute home run selections for the Falcons. Continuing on, I've got the selection of Garrett Bradbury and Irv Smith Jr. by the Minnesota Vikings. And again, continuing this trend of offensive linemen, Garrett Bradbury at the center guard position will be so useful for the Vikings. That offensive line really underperformed last year, but now inserting him, potentially getting some blocking from Irv Smith Jr., and all of a sudden, I think Kirk Cousins elevated a little bit, but more importantly here again is the running back position, because the Vikings do have a stud at that position in Dalvin Cook, a guy that a lot of people think can make the jump to a top 5 running back as long as he stays healthy. We saw how much the Vikings relied on him after the change in offensive coordinators late in the season, and I do think they want to become a run-first offense. Take some pressure off of Kirk Cousins and then let Dalvin Cook really control the flow of the game. Both these selections, Irv Smith and Garrett Bradbury, will go a long way in opening up holes for Dalvin Cook. He is a great rusher. He is a great pass catcher. And I do think he will be a top 10 running back fantasy-wise. Now, Irv Smith, I realize Kyle Rudolph is still there. Irv Smith could be the heir apparent at that position. I just don't think the time is now in 2019. So I wouldn't be taking a shot on him as far as fantasy tight ends go. To me, the big picture here, again, is the upgrade for the quarterback, but more importantly, for the running back in Dalvin Cook. Next, we have got Josh Jacobs, selected by the Oakland Raiders in the late first round. A pairing that a lot of people were talking up prior to the draft, and wouldn't you know it, it's exactly how it panned out. And to me, No coincidence that a lot of experts were also saying this was the rookie running back that they were most excited about in terms of potential fantasy impact right from the get-go. Look, Josh Jacobs in a situation where he can succeed from week one because there's a lot of holes on this team, and now even more so with that Isaiah Crowell injury out for the season. I realize Doug Martin will return. There's still Jalen Richard, but I do think Jacobs, out of all those guys, has the makings of an every down running back. He's the youngest one out of the bunch. And I do think you have to consider that he was a first-round running back taken by John Gruden and Mike Mayock. Both these guys know what it means to select a running back that early on, and I think he will be given a lot of opportunities. I like what he can do potentially as a pass catcher. The last thing that I do want to say about him is out of all of these rookie running backs taken, I don't necessarily think he will be the most successful one because long term, there is another running back that I like a little bit more so out of these rookies. But from week one, I think he will have the biggest impact early on just because the remaining rookie running backs that were taken, I don't think that they will break out in that starting running back role as early as Josh Jacobs. For that reason, I like Jacobs. I have him ranked probably right around 28th, 29th in my PPR running back rankings. Obviously, that's subject to change since it's still very early on, but I do think he can be a guy that you put at the flex position, and just because of all the opportunities he will have, he will bring you value there. Next up, we have got Marquise Brown of the Baltimore Ravens, the first wide receiver chosen in the first round. Brown is an absolutely electric playmaker. He has got crazy speed. He checks the boxes for the Ravens at an area of need, especially after the departure of John Brown and Michael Crabtree. That down the field target for Lamar Jackson, I think he is going to be a very welcome addition, but honestly, the reason I want to bring him up is because he could potentially be a guy that doesn't meet expectations. I know a lot of people are going to want to find those impact rookie wide receivers, but I do think there's going to be less than people expect. So I want to highlight some guys that potentially might be a bit of a letdown. And with Marquise Brown, it starts with that foot injury. Will he be available to go from the start of the season, and will he be 100%? That's a big factor to consider. And then you also have the Lamar Jackson factor. Look, the Ravens are a run-first team. Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson will carry that load. I still don't think Lamar Jackson is as accurate as he needs to be. And obviously, you're going to need that if you want to be a successful fantasy wide receiver. You need an accurate fantasy quarterback. And we saw it last year. Lamar Jackson gets his value due to his rushing yards primarily and due to his rushing touchdowns. So I wouldn't expect a complete 180 in the matter of a couple of months. That's why I'm kind of, hesitant with Marquise Brown. Next, another wide receiver that I want to draw attention to for a similar reason as Marquise Brown. I've got N'Keal Harry of the Patriots, the last pick in the first round. People are really excited about N'Keal Harry for two reasons. First and foremost, he is going to the Patriots and to Tom Brady, an organization that if they can't maximize his potential, then no one can. But more importantly, because of the departure of Rob Gronkowski, people see N'Keal Harry potentially being that red zone big body replacement. But I want to point a couple things out. The Patriots, they've still got Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and they're also expected to add Benjamin Watson. So for that reason, I don't think N'Keal Harry will have that big of a role in that area as people expect. He's also going to be very touchdown dependent, I believe. And lastly, the Patriots, look, they are a run-first team. That is what they're slowly but surely transitioning to. They added another running back. Sony Michel was selected last year. James White is still there. Rex Burkhead. I know Tom Brady can get it done when it matters, but for the most part, the Patriots save him towards the postseason. That's when they need him to do his thing. In the regular season, I fully anticipate them to lean on the rushing attack, and then when Tom Brady needs to, get those clutch passing yards, he's going to go to Julian Edelman and James White. That's what I believe. So N'Keal Harry, like I said, I wouldn't expect great things from him right away. But if there's some injuries to those pass catchers, I do think he will have an opportunity. I mean, heck, Chris Hogan is no longer there. Cordero Patterson no longer there. We'll see what happens with Josh Gordon. That'll be an interesting factor into all of this. But for now, N'Keal Harry, someone I am pumping the brakes on as well. Continuing on with our list of wide receivers, next we have Mecole Hardman of the Kansas City Chiefs. The difference is now we get to our list of wide receivers that I think can be impact rookies. And the reason Hardman is here is twofold. First and foremost, he joins a Kansas City offense that was absolutely spectacular. They have the reigning MVP at quarterback. And even though I do think the Kansas City offense will take a step back, not only because of the loss of Kareem Hunt, but also likely because of the loss of Tyreek Hill. And that's the second big reason why Hardman is listed here, because the whole Tyreek Hill debacle playing out during this offseason, I would be shocked if Tyreek Hill plays a single game in 2019. Heck, even if he's on the Kansas City Chiefs roster in 2019, that would be a surprise to me. So Hardman, to some extent, will be Tyreek Hill's replacement. Look, I don't think he's going to put up those Tyreek Hill numbers right away. I mean, Tyreek Hill was special. He absolutely torched defenses last year. Speed that kills. But I will say Hardman will have his opportunities, because I don't think Sammy Watkins is that wide receiver number one for the Kansas City Chiefs. So Hardman, insert him into that Kansas City offense. Andy Reid has said he has been impressed by him. I think he will have plenty of opportunities, and hopefully he goes a long way in making people forget about Tyreek Hill. Now, I think he can be probably the best rookie wide receiver to come out of this draft as far as production goes. Moving on, we've got our last wide receiver on this list, and that is DK Metcalf of the Seattle Seahawks. People were expecting him to be a first-round selection. Obviously, it wasn't the case. No matter, he's in a great spot, obviously because of the Doug Baldwin situation for Seattle. Unfortunate, but he is no longer with the team. People don't know if he's ever going to play in the NFL again because of recent injuries. But that just means an opportunity for DK Metcalf. I still think Tyler Lockett, probably the new wide receiver one for Seattle. But Metcalf will have every opportunity to succeed. Now, the question marks with Metcalf are how raw is he? Because I think that was a big reason why he lasted so long into the second round and wasn't a first round selection. Also, on top of that, the Seattle Seahawks showed us last year they are a run-first team. So that will limit some of the passing opportunities that DK Metcalf will see, just like all the other Seattle wide receivers. And we've seen Seattle go hot and cold, so we have to take that into account. I fully expect them to have a dip at some point in the 2019 season, but DK Metcalf will be a guy that a lot of people are taking flyers on. Now, by no means will he be a Doug Baldwin replacement. Doug Baldwin was an excellent PPR option, a guy that can catch 8 to 9 balls every single game. DK Metcalf, a much bigger, physical type of wide receiver. So to some extent, again, I think he will be touchdown dependent. But after Hardman, Metcalf is the wide receiver that I am highest on next as far as the rookie wide receivers go. The final name on this list is none other than David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears, the rookie running back I am excited about most by far. And the reason being is I absolutely love the situation Montgomery finds himself in. Pair him up with the offensive guru that is Matt Nagy. The Bears were rumored to go ahead and be looking for another running back after the trade of Jordan Howard. We just didn't know who it would be. David Montgomery, turns out, is the answer here. Now, let me clarify. As much as I love David Montgomery, I don't think he will be a factor early on in the season. I think he's going to have to prove himself, beat out a couple of guys. But long-term, late 2019, 2020, 2021, I think he will be the starting running back for the Chicago Bears, because compared to Mike Davis, compared to Tariq Cohen, I think he's the closest thing they have to an every down running back. And you know, he can be that Jordan Howard replacement. But on top of that, he also has Tariq Cohen skills in terms of a pass catcher. So for that reason, I think probably by midseason, he replaces Mike Davis as the second running back. And then it just comes down to him and Tariq Cohen, who has more playmaking abilities. Ultimately, I think Montgomery will win out just because of what he can do as a pure rusher of the football. So if you're in a dynasty league, I'm absolutely in love with Montgomery. For that reason, I think he will be the steal of this draft as far as rookie running backs go. So with that, we finish up our list of the biggest rookie names to know in NFL fantasy this year. And as always, let me hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree with the names that were listed here? Are there other guys that you think should be added to this list, or other players, especially in the offensive line, that you think will have a big trickle-down effect? Did you disagree with some of these selections? Let me hear it, along with any other questions you guys might have. And as always, if you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.